Okay, so to get going for this evening, we're very glad to have Rory Preddy here. Rory works at Microsoft, and I'm going to read this directly from your bio, Rory. He heads up the Middle East and Africa accessibility pillar for Microsoft. And he speaks and inspires on how to empower everyone in every organization to achieve more. And your focus for the last few years has been on research and development with a focus on cloud research, consulting, and training. So I've heard Rory speak before at DevConf on accessibility, and it was a fantastic talk. So I'm sure we're all going to enjoy what you have for us this evening. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have a question, please just type it in the chat. Make sure you're sending it to everyone. And at the end of the talk, we will host a discussion where we will run through all the questions that you might have and that anything else that might arise out of that discussion. Okay, Rory, over to you. Thanks.
Thanks so much for that introduction. And you can follow along with the slides. So the code samples and the slides are available in aka.ms/4-all. And it's got a really nice immersive reader demo and slides. You can reach me on @RoryPreddy. I try to do 50% relevant Azure and advocacy updates, and also 50% memes, which I'm kind of famous for, and sometimes get me into trouble. So who am I? So I've been in R&D now for about 10 years and at developer advocacy and in cloud and Java advocacy. And I joined Microsoft 3 years ago, and I am now a developer advocate for Java and accessibility. What does that actually mean? It means that I get to speak to the product teams for the individual services and make sure that they get your feedback. So if you have feedback on a Microsoft product aligned to development, it's my responsibility to meet the developers where they are and make sure that that gets back through to the engineering and product teams to make your experience wondrous. That's it. That's as much as one. And one of the things I want to show you now is in this talk is how to code for accessibility. And the world is changing. And for once, accessible software is within the reach of everyone. And I'm going to show you how and give you opportunities to incorporate accessibility into your software. Okay, so a little bit about me. I have achondroplasia, which is a very fancy word for saying that I am short. I'm 4'1", or in the metric system, I'm 1.2 meters, 120 centimeters. And I'm 50 kilos now, and I was 66 kilos, but keto, everyone's doing keto now in lockdown, which is great. And I have a lot of accessible changes that I've made. And one of them is my midlife crisis, my 335i. And you can see here on these car pedals, I've actually bolted on the car pedals, and it's only failed me once. But that's really the story. The start of the story is that for accessibility, a lot of the requirements have been to be bolt on. And you know that because when people think of accessibility, they just think of wheelchair accessible requirements, and it's changed now. And we're going to see exactly how that's changed. And here's me also speaking at the University of Bloemfontein, and I'm using a chair to kind of see the screen. And here's me at one of my previous employees, and you can see coffee is very important to me. Diet to me, same as single malt whiskeys. Actually, I've kind of fallen in love with blends lately. I don't know, you know, the world doesn't make sense. Yeah, the bolt-on has also acceded to agile software development. Why am I saying this? Because I want to discuss agile development a little bit, because agile was supposed to also change and improve the lives for accessible software developers, because it was supposed to be able to change rapid development cycles and also give people more of a voice into their development ecosystem and allow them to really have more control over their ecosystems. And if you don't know them, the manifesto for agile software development in the early 2000s, and it says we're uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it by helping others to do it. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. That is, while there is value in the items on the right, we'll value the items on the left more. Basically, let us do what we want to do. We know how to do it better than you. So that's really what happened. And this was a direct result of, originally when software was created, people were kind of more in control, and then they fell out of control. And then Agile came about as an attempt to really give a voice to the developers. But it lost the plot a little bit, because instead we had open offices, the bane of existences. Maybe not so much now in this COVID climate, but open offices were a way that people could, like, microwave popcorn for everyone, and create, like this picture here, fish tanks in the middle of your open office. Can you imagine how hard it is to clean that, or why they would do that? And, upper management goes, yes, we must have open offices. Everyone else is going there with that. And then we also had whiteboards, these magnificent whiteboards, some cost as much as German sedans. We learned how to stick Post-it notes. I've been on 2 courses to learn how to stick Post-it notes. And what you do is you hold the Post-it note in your hand, you take your finger, and you gently actually go in and you don't disturb the note too much, but you push the note upwards to not disturb the glue crystals, because you don't want to pop too many at the same time. What happened? We were supposed to kill the Hydra with Agile, and the Hydra didn't die. And if you don't know the Hydra is the mythical Greek mythology beast that you chop one head off and another grows about. And Agile was supposed to kill the Hydra, and we still have bugs, we still have software, we still have the same kind of code smell with essential difficulties. Brooks, that the similar paper in the 1980s said, software is complex, it's changeable. We still have those essential difficulties. And it's the same with accessible software. We still have those accessible software because we're not able to kind of chop the Hydra. And when we do chop one accessible software bug off and another grows out there, and we're doing what I did, which is bolt on with accessible software. And I'm going to show you another mechanisms. I'm going to show you an ability to actually create Ikigai. Now, Ikigai, one of the ways that I lost weight and I'm losing weight is I only eat with chopsticks. Trust me in this. This is the most frustrating exercise you'll ever do in your life, but you will not get enough calories in your body when you actually eat macaroni and cheese with chopsticks like I did today. And Ikigai is a Japanese philosophy that says that you can create synergy with the world around you by what you love, what the world needs, what you get paid for, and what you're good at, and Ikigai. And ideally, if you do that and you incorporate all of these features, you'll be able to create a Shangri-La world where everyone can have accessible software. Also, with that in mind, we're having a huge drive now recently with aligned autonomy. And if you don't know aligned autonomy, it is the alignment with organizations, roles, teams, cadences, and architecture with plan and practices, and made very famous by the Daniel H. Pick book, Drive. But what happens? We had the Hydra, we had this move for Agile, and the only people who put your hands up for accessibility software are bank robbers, preachers, DJs, cops, and roller coasters. It didn't work. And I'm here today to show you why. And the biggest issue is that we live in empathy bubbles. And what is an empathy bubble? The empathy bubble is that no one has lived in your shoes, and no one has lived in my shoes, and no one has lived in the accessibility requirement for each person. And I'm going to show you how to actually do that. So that's a little bit of the backstory behind the how we got to this point. And it's important to understand that, because if you don't know, while you go in and you create and you chop the hard dress head off, you're going to get to the point that you're going to fail with your accessibility software, because you're going to have that empathy bubble. You're going to take that agile practice. You're going to try to create that ikigai, and you're not going to manage. So I've got a plan. We're going to define accessibility. We're going to understand an organization or your organization's unique accessibility motivators. We're going to set achievable interim milestones. We're going to implement the tools. And then finally, we're going to measure, improve, and automate. So first, let's start with what a definition is or isn't on accessibility. And a lot of people think that accessibility is bolt-on. Remember that bolt-on story that we discussed. Now, accessibility is not bolt-on. It's the design of products, services, and environments that everyone, ikigai, including people with disabilities, can fully experience them. It's not designing for disabilities. It's not designing for people without disabilities. It's designing for everyone. And Microsoft believes that once you do that, you have inclusive product and design, you reach accessibility compliance, and then increase productivity, you hit innovation. I'm going to show you how this happens once you actually stop thinking of accessibility as a means to an end for bolt-on. We also need to define disability. Now, disability is not a personal health condition. When you go to a doctor and you say, not feeling too good, doc, and the doctor goes, I think you've got the disability. That never happens. The only time that you feel disabled is when you have a mismatched human interaction. Now, as part of my midlife crisis, I bought one of those BMI scales. And I put it down, and I set all the settings out, and it had a picture of a crawling baby and an adult man. And I thought, this is not going to end well. And I put all of my settings in there. At the time, I was 66 kilos, 4'1", 120 centimeters. And I got on, and it did like its little algorithm, its AI algorithm. And it said that it used terrible words, like literally it used words that we shouldn't use in polite conversation. And I felt disabled because they hadn't actually catered for me, that my bone structure was different. And that was the start of me speaking on accessibility, because I realized that I had to change the way that this AI was driven. So once we have the definition of accessibility and disability, let's look at also accessibility design principles based on the Web Center for Accessibility Guidelines. There's only 4 design principles. What's perceivable? Can you see it? So make software that you can see, and that's for visual impairment. Operable, can you use it? So keyboard, can you operate your software just with the keyboard? Understandable, can you understand it? Now, a lot of the new features around software are made to cater for understandable accessibility design. ADHD, autism spectrum, those are features that you want to cater for. They're understandable and robust. It won't break future technologies. Now, my phone here, you would normally use it with landscape, but most people with accessibility requirements use it with portrait because they don't have as much mobility. So you need to be able to cater for your software to be pretty robust. So that's the definition. Let's look at motivators. So we have stick and carrot. Now let's look at the stick first. So stick, the US 21st Century Integrated Digital Experience Act and the EU Parliament Directive on Digital Accessibility that said by next year, all mobile and public-facing civil sites, so government sites or public organizations, have to be WCAG 2.1 AA compliant. Or like Canada did, you get a $100,000 fine per day. Remember what GDPR did? How it changed the internet overnight? This is going to hit it even bigger. You've got a year to do this. But that's stick. I prefer carrot. And carrot says, and this is a quote from Bill Gates, for most of human history, we've put our innovative capacity into improving the quantity of life. Because we're living longer, our focus is starting to shift towards improving the quality of life. We're altruistically changing the way that we consider and we look at the world because we realize that the stick mechanism is the wrong kind of mindset. And once we have that empathy We can also look at awareness of other person's difficulties, pity, sympathy, empathy, and then compassion. And how you do that, and this is the first step. Remember I said that empathy bubble. You need to shatter that empathy bubble, and you need to be able to create that kind of perception of other people's. And you do that through persona spectrum. So here we have Claudia, Ashley, and Ron. Ron is 82-year-old, retired, multiple conditions, arthritis, losing his hearing, cataracts, hips replacement, doesn't use any assistive technology. And you take that and you create accessibility personas, and you do persona labs. And you create and you go into that person's world and you shatter that bubble. Once you have those accessibility personas, you superimpose them using these inclusive design steps onto your software journey. One is you recognize exclusion with those persona spectrums. Two, you solve for one, you extend to many. So the persona spectrums actually come in categories. And finally, you learn from diversity. And I'll show you how through that learning, then you can actually create innovation. We've got our persona spectrums, and the classic example is that you look at someone who has an amputee, who has limited access with their use of their arm, so one arm person, and that person's in the same persona spectrum as an arm injury and a new parent. And I know what you're thinking, new parents, they're not disabled, but I promise you, if you've met a new parent, they are mentally, physically, financially, sleep deprived. They need help. And if you go to your boss and you say, I want to cater for that person with the one arm, the amputee, he'll say, yeah, but the US Center of Statistics says that there's only 26,000 in the US who are within that persona spectrum. But then you'll say to them, but the temporary disability, the people who have arm injuries, there's an additional 13 million. And situational difficulties are 8 million. So there's 21 million people who actually have in that persona spectrum. Now, when we take the persona spectrums with everyone with accessibility requirements, there's more than 1 billion people in the world right now who have accessibility requirements. When you take friends and family and people who are heavily invested with those individuals, you get 3 billion people, nearly half of the world's population. So catering for the right persona spectrum is not isolating and ignoring the billion people and 3 billion invested people that need your help and your software. You take those persona spectrum and you superimpose them over your journey. So this is a ticketing scenario for plane tickets. When we do fly again, you got the registration, navigation, and checkout process. Login, add to cart, ticketing, checkout, and right at the end there, you've got your experience. The survey that you create, that static survey that says, was this good? Was this bad? We'll send it somewhere else. You superimpose that with the persona spectrum, and everything changes there. When you land, you got responsive design. You've got a capture for registration, accessibility help desk, single sign-on. On navigation, callback help, one button access, voice search. On checkout, SMS and email, one button access. And then right at the end, you don't have that static survey. You have AI adjustment. The AI will change the entire journey to be able to create more innovation with you and say to you, did we help you with your accessibility requirements? You create that innovation by understanding, did you cater for that persona spectrum? And that's really how it goes from accessibility bolt-on all the way through to innovation. Let's look at also how to then now look at taking that into your milestones of your software development process. So your normal bolt-on software there, you can see there, you've got the wireframe product backlog, sprint backlog, and then you've got the rinse and repeat with the agile process with the sprint and using Scrum. And then a shippable project, accessibility, it comes after the fact. And then you know the law there that once you try to fix software, once it's been shipped, it's almost impossible. But we've seen, and I'm not going to get up because I don't actually have shoes on, but I've got pants. This was an important milestone for me for this thing. So you must understand I'm fully pantsed out here, but I'm not going to get up to do my little shift left dance because these are actually wired headphones. But we've seen now, that's my left, your left. And the shift left movement is move everything within the agile mindset, and one of them is to not have a large investment with bolt-on right at the end for accessibility software, but small investments throughout the process. And then it gets to the point that you bring in introducing accessibility throughout your entire software development process. There isn't a bolt-on anymore. And let's see how you can do that with the tool sets. So X-Core is the de facto standard in industry for accessibility requirements, and it's made by DQ Labs. Now, Microsoft has partnered with a lot of our products with DQ Labs. Microsoft Word, Office, Teams, OneNote. You've heard of Immersive Reader. Now, Immersive Reader is the kind of tool there that you can just open up, and it'll give you that view of all of your accessibility software. And it's done in conjunction with X-Core, with some of the software there. But we incorporate a lot of the software there to check and to help developers. And so what X-Core is, it's a JavaScript library, and I know what you're saying, Rory, but you're a Java developer, but it's a wraparound. I did a talk recently at PyCon India with PyCon because it's wrapping around that JavaScript. Yes, I know, the JavaScript one, okay? Everything is going to be written in JavaScript. I program in JavaScript. We wrap around with Java and JavaScript, and I'm not going to have that argument right now, though, because the JavaScript bunch is just too aggressive for me to have that argument with. So it's a JavaScript library. It renders a scanned DOM, and you can do it on Android and Windows apps also. Reports back to JSON. Same engine that Accessibility Insights uses. I'm going to show you a demo of Accessibility Insights. You've got the developer and also your DevOps pipeline. You can use it for both. You go yarn test or .NET test. It scans your TypeScript or your HTML page, and then it puts it into your driver, so Selenium. And then you've got your actual library, and then it prints out the results. And I'm going to show you a demo of this and show you how easy it is to do that. So here, you can get started on it right now, github.com/Microsoft/X-pipeline, X-pipeline-samples. And this is in TypeScript. You can get the C# ones also. And there are so many, every language you can think of, because I've spoken on this talk in nearly every single language: Python, Ruby, TypeScript, Java. I spoke at that Ruby conference on using this tool set. So it's really well supported. And then you get your DevOps pipeline. And I get some feedback sometimes, but Rory, that's bolt-on. What you've just described to us is maybe you have an error before. What about if we've got legacy software? I need a solution to make my legacy software compliant. I can't go back to it and fix it sometimes. And introducing Immersive Reader is one of our cognitive services that's generally available. And what Immersive Reader, and this is Microsoft Teams, you click on it and it creates an Immersive Reader of something that wasn't accessible before. But Rory, this is a programming talk. Yes, but you incorporate it into your website because it's a cognitive service. I'm going to show you how to code that. So what can it do? You can change the language. And then PyCon India actually did it in Hindi because it's got language features. And if you haven't seen the news, Microsoft actually reached quantum compliance, quantum similarity, where our AI is more advanced than human abilities. And it's built into Immersive Reader. So language translate into 60 languages, so it can understand nouns and verbs as part of language. It can also do pronunciation, and you can see that you can mouse over. It'll read to you in text to speech, break it up into syllables, and then also pictures. And we drive this in most of the schooling software also that we have. So let's do a demo. And then we can conclude. So the demo is a bit extensive because I'm going to do everything that I've kind of said that I promised to do. So let's minimize that. If I do lose you, just give me a shout. Let's minimize everything. And I sometimes forget how to Mac because I'm a Windows boy. But if I do lose you, so let's see here. What we want to show you first is bolt-on. So you've got some software. Let's go here, and I'm going to go to bad, which is my. So this is a software here. I'm going to make it bigger, so that you hold down Option, and then you go to Zoom. So this is the Web Center for Accessibility before and after. So this is a inaccessible page here, and then you can go to the accessible version there. And the accessible version and the inaccessible version looks exactly the same, because what the person has done here is that they violated good HTML policies just to get the software out here. And I can prove that to you. So the accessible version here on the bullet points here, and if I go inspect, it's done correctly with list items, and the screen reader software there will be able to read it because it's done correctly. But if I go to the inaccessible site here and I go to the same items here, can you guess what they've done here? They've just done BRs and P tags, and the screen reader software won't be able to understand what's going there. And it's the same with the alt tags here. There's no image alt tags. They've done everything wrong. So I want to check, I want to make sure this software is correct. So I can go to my Chrome or Edge plugin. I'm using Chrome, I know, Microsoft, a Java developer running on Mac. I know the irony is not lost on me. I can go to my little software there, and I can click on Accessibility Insights for Web. And this has got the X engine running in the background. And I've got all of this nice software there. I can go automated checks, color, headings, tab stops, landmarks. But I've also got two settings here for assessment. And assessment goes into a full kind of assessment that you can do, and you can give to your developers who have to go through this manually. And this is full WCAG 2.1 AA success criteria. We don't want to do that right now. What we want to do is we want to do this quickly and painlessly. So we're going to go there, we're going to go fast check. And fast check goes through majority of the issues. So I'm going to go fast check on my inaccessible page. And it's going to give me a listing of all of the items and everything. But more importantly here, it's going to also give me a visual representation of all of the sites. It should have actually given me a little bit more than that. I think, let me do that again. Well, it's given me one there, color contrast. So let's go there again. Let's go automated checks. Let's close that there, visual helper. Okay, that's great. Let's do that again. And we want to go there, visual helper. And it should have given me a few more errors, but it's fine. We can do that. Not automated checks. Let's close that. We'll go back into Accessibility Insights. We go into FastPass, and why am I going into that? I want to go into FastPass. Automated checks, FastPass. I think I'm in the right page. So let's just go refresh here. Inaccessible. Let's make it bigger. Let's go here and let's go FastPass this time. That's better. Okay, so visual helper, we've got HTML lang and everything like that. And we'll move that. That's better. You know, the interesting thing about demos is that everyone wants you to succeed. And when you do, it's so much sweeter. And then we've got all of that. Now let's go to the image alt tag, and you can see the image alt tag. Inspect HTML, copy failure details, file issue, and I can file the issue straight to GitHub. So I had to put GitHub there, but it says fix one of the following, and then you can actually do that. So you can just take that screenshot, or you can follow those issues. And this is the really kind of the bolt on, because now you can say, I have my page, send it through the testing team or send it through the developer team. But I know, Rory, you said DevOps. Let's see how you can do the exact same process in a DevOps pipeline. So just briefly before I go there, you can also do tab stops. So if I go into here and I can go into tab stops. Now tab stops, if I go into here and I tab stop here, it just ends. But if I go into tab stops here and I activate tab stops, you can see that you can actually navigate and check that it's all accessible and the tab stops through here. So that kind of page, let's go in and look at the first kind of coding demo that we have, and we want to show you how to create a version of that is DevOps compliant. So this is a DevOps project that I've already kind of got working, and it is got some pages that have violations, and it's ready to kind of test. This is a page with violations, and you've got your X results here. and you can run individual tests here. And if I run these individual tests, it's going to start up a Chrome headless browser as part of the Xcore, and you can do that in TypeScript, Python, in a lot of the different languages. So I can run the test here. But Rory, this isn't DevOps. This is running locally on your PC. This should run here. Okay, I'm not too sure why the output is not coming through, but you can also run it locally here. If I wanted to go into my bash script, let's close that off, and I can go terminal, new terminal, and I can just go, this is Java, because I wanted to show you Java, and I can go Maven test, and it'll run through, and there's 53 tests there. You can see the Chrome drive is actually being created. You can access this in the DQ Labs repository, or you can also go to those X pipeline samples in the slideshow. And this goes through all of the tests you want to do. Now, it's as simple as that to actually go in to your dashboard then. And I've got all of the tests running here. And it's pretty simple to do that. So I've got my pipelines. Let's go create another pipeline here. This is Azure DevOps. And Azure DevOps is almost free for usage. And it's a competitor for GitHub Actions. But so you can go new pipeline. And we created one before there. And I'm going to show you how to create a new pipeline. I'm going to go GitHub. Yes. Single sign-on. Always trust everything that says single sign-on everything. And then I'm going to go, okay, select a repository. Let's go Maven. Xcore Maven, which is the repository that I had there. Configure your pipeline. Yeah, Maven project there. It's fine. You can see there that I've already got a inside of my Git repository. It's just going to call Maven basically and save and run. And that's it. That's all you really need to do to actually drive Xcore in your libraries, or use the X pipeline samples with TypeScript or JavaScript. I've got it running in Python, and I did a talk on JRuby. It was pretty simple. But Rory, what about immersive reader? I've got some legacy code there that I need to actually do. I know. And we'll come back to that job there. Let's see immersive reader. So the first thing you want to do with immersive reader is you create an immersive reader resource. And I've got a resource here that I've created, immersive reader RPZA. It costs about 1 cent for every million calls an immersive reader. Yeah, it's pretty cheap. And immersive reader is just a cognitive service, and you get, the immersive reader, once you have that, I want overview, I'll show you, you get a secret key. There we go. You get a key, and you take that key and you pop it into your library. So keys and endpoints, don't worry, this is only recorded for everyone to see. You get the keys there and the endpoints. You take that endpoint then and you put it into a project. So I've got a project running here, open recent, and you can see here the immersive reader SDK is that JavaScript wrapper, and you can get all of these different examples. So if I go here, I can actually show you all the different examples that you can get. And I've got just the quick stop Java, but you've got C#, iOS, Java, Kotlin, Node.js, Python, and then simple HTML. So I've got the Java one working here because my children need to eat. And I've got get the auth token, which gets those tokens then, and then just returns the token there. And this is just a Java class for that. And then I've got some JavaScript in a JavaScript index.html, sorry, JSP. And it basically just calls in jQuery and has some text that we're going to drive immersive reader with. And then a JavaScript kind of get auth token, and then the little launch, there we go, launch there, that basically goes and launches immersive reader as a button. So we can run that. And if I remember correctly, I run that with this. So I go Maven Tomcat 7:run. And I did that also with Flask recently last week. You can do that with, and then it goes to port 8888 because, you know, it's difficult. It needs to have some weird port, 8888. And then that HTML that we saw there before, no, that's not what I want, 8888. localhost 888, and there's Immersive Reader. So Immersive Reader is a tool that implements proven techniques and blah, 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 and there's got different languages and a little button here. So this is the bolt-on for the software, and I click on Immersive Reader, and it creates an entire immersive experience. Immersive Reader is a tool. I did have a voice, so this is
Immersive Reader is a tool that implements proven techniques to improve.
Yeah. So, and then, okay, cool. Rory, you promised me more. So text preferences. Let's go change text preferences, increase space themes, so we can go show source formatting. But then you can also go as syllables, nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, show labels. Let's do a little bit more line focus, because you might have cognitive issues. Picture dictionary also, so you can see there. And let's change the language to Afrikaans. And we want to go by document. And now I actually have an entire accessible Afrikaans language dictionary. Okay, it doesn't have read aloud there, but it has other languages. And now I can actually go in and go through line by line with my accessible software. And I can cater for one of 60 different languages. And all I did was just put a little button there with pennies a year, and I made an accessible version of my website. So that's the 3 ways that you can actually do it, because I wanted to show you one is that you can do bolt-on, which is the testing software that already kind of, let's go options, bigger zoom, that already kind of exists. Then I wanted to show you how to create an accessible DevOps pipeline. And if we go back, then our pipeline should have run. Let me just make sure, because I like to show you that run. So the job is done, everything's working. It ran, and we did that live there. And you've got your checkout process, Maven, and I didn't even have to code anything. So yeah, so everything's run, and we can go back to our dashboard that I created earlier today, and we should see our tests. Yeah, so yeah, there we go. There's our test that ran, which is great. And then let's go back to our PowerPoint. So that's demo done, glass ceiling done. So in conclusion, thank you so much for coming today. Hopefully you've shown you how to actually look at empathy with those persona spectrums. Shift left with all the tool sets that we've discussed, and then automate. Put it in your DevOps pipeline, and be able to, if you can't do that, use the Immersive Reader. And thank you so much. You can reach me at Rory Pretty. My DMs are open. And all of that is available on aka.ms/4-all. The QR reader also there is available, and we'll take questions. Okay, so I see one question is, what is the name of that Chrome add-on? So the Chrome add-on is called Accessibility Insights, and it's available also in Chrome and Edge on the Chrome store. You can also use, you know, what is the Chrome add-on Lighthouse. And so there's multiple mechanisms, lots of tools around there to check in around that. But you can check, you can run in DevOps, and then you can also go in and create your Immersive Reader cognitive services. So then is there a WordPress plugin for Immersive Reader? Anything that can run JavaScript. So you can put it into WordPress. Anything that can run JavaScript can run Immersive Reader. So you saw there Node.js, a simple site. So you literally can embed it into any static HTML page. Now, going to Outlook, Word, Teams, it uses Immersive Reader already. You go into LinkedIn, go put into LinkedIn, and you'll see that nearly everything runs Immersive Reader, because one of the requirements is that Microsoft has made is that everything has to be accessible. We're mandated, if we put publicly facing software, to make it accessible. And accessibility insights. Okay, cool. It's that. I think that's everything. So yeah. So yes.
I have some questions.
Yes.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. That was really great. I've never seen this Immersive Reader before, and it looks like a fantastic tool. I just want to, before I ask the question, on the Chrome add-on in Firefox, Firefox actually has a built-in accessibility checker. You can right-click on any node in the page, and it'll show you, it'll give you accessibility API information on it.
Yes.
Just another thing to look at.
One of the things that we took a little bit step further. So if you go into the accessibility requirements for here, is that we wanted to take it a little bit step further with the what's it? Where is it there? You can still see my screen with the assessment. So you get add-up tools, but the assessment really goes through a lot more details, and you can create out of that assessment. If you go here, you can actually print out a report. And this is very important because this is very extensive. You can export the results and test. You can export the results, and it gives you a very detailed kind of overview of that checklist with that. So that's really great. Yeah. So that's really extensive in that sense, that if you want to go through a lot more detail, and that the FastPass actually ties into that though. So we took that check that you said on has Firefox, but then we extended it also into the assessment, because we use this tool right now, Microsoft Office. So www.microsoft.com and the Office sites. This is the tool we actually use to make sure that it's accessible. It doesn't go and get deployed until it is accessible. And we check that also with the same DevOps pipeline that I told you about.
Right. What's really great about this as well is that I see you've got the links there to the WCAG for each item report, which is fantastic.
Yes.
Because reading that whole thing is rather difficult. So knowing where you should go to check something is a really great addition.
The persona spectrums help also though. So once you do those labs, those persona spectrum labs, then you can also isolate exactly where your weak areas are and where you need to cater for your population. So it's always good to start with your persona spectrums and to kind of cater for your population, and then to look at also how to broaden it to other persona spectrums.
Yeah. I think spectrum is the crucial word, isn't it? We tend to think often as disability as some kind of a permanent thing, like, as you say, an amputee, but that's just a minor consideration in terms of numbers.
Yeah, 6 months ago, I didn't need glasses.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I didn't either.
And the irony is that I now am advocating for a tool that I need. And that's also around the silver generation, the elderly generation. And it's $1 trillion a year just for the silver generation. So to isolate and not to cater for that, you're actually not catering for a lot of your clientele to use your software. And disability, like I showed you, is situational, can be temporary. Remember the parents with the screaming child. So it takes that empathy bubble popping to really understand how you can actually do this. It was a kind of an emotional journey for me also, because when I started on this process, I hadn't learned how to pop that emotion, that empathy bubble. And it took me a while to be able to do that, to be able to talk confidently in those areas, and also to be able to say that you can pop that empathy bubble.
Yeah. That's great. Do you think we'll ever get legislation here like there is in the US and the European Union?
I think most of us work for multinational companies that need to actually deploy there. And even though, remember, the GDPR said that if you store one person's EU citizens there, they'll shut you down, they'll fine you. It's the exact same thing coming. But the problem is that it's going to hit harder than GDPR, because Canada actually said $100,000 per day. Whereas GDPR just said that you won't deal with EU citizens. Canada will fine you, and a lot of the companies are actually taking Canada's. Well, our constitution is based on Canadian law, though. So not if, but when.
Right. Good.
So yeah, I maybe want to interject there as well. Like I tend to, Well, not as much anymore, but I have done a lot of work for the government and municipalities and so forth. And I think one of the problems why we're not seeing kind of movement legally, because there's definitely some movement in terms of the states and so forth. There's definitely been a significant uptick in terms of lawsuits surrounding accessibility in the States, specifically within kind of e-commerce. But I think like one of the big problems we have in South Africa is just the kind of the state that the public digital platforms are in. Yeah, some of them are still built with like tables. So yeah, I mean, like, I don't really see how like we can move forward kind of having the South African like national legal system enforce that type of thing when our national kind of digital services are in the state that they are in. Like I guess they're probably of like kind of the worst offenders here.
So we're talking in the context of if you see here in websites, right? This is the Fed says like front-end development, but PWAs and apps are very prevalent. So you can actually go accessibilityinsights.io. So that's the actual site, accessibilityinsights.io. And then accessibilityinsights.io, there's Android and web and actual Windows applications. So the exact same tool, X Engine, is used also in full-fledged PWAs and Windows applications. So you can actually go in there and do that. So where the innovation comes in with those kind of apps, it's going to be much easier to be able to look at creating the Ikigai kind of experience around those apps than it is, yes, legacy applications. But then you have the bolt-on with immersive reader. So just that little button there, and then they'll be able to click on it and open it up. And I see a lot of more people using that than going, okay, cool, let's go change our site completely. When it hits, they're going to do that rather. It's the same as the GDPR when they go, we were storing your cookies all the time any which way. Now we're just going to tell you we are storing them. Nothing changed other than we're just telling you that we're going to store them.
That is true. Yeah. I mean, I like to think that we'll get to a point where, in the way that I've said this before, so apologies to people who've heard me say it before. The way responsive design used to be a like extra thing that you did, and then it just became the thing that you did. That hopefully we'll get to accessibility where it's just a thing you do as part of your everyday work. It's not
with the COVID time. And when I started this talk and I said that, it's a great opportunity now, because prior to this, the people who had accessibility requirements didn't have a voice. And now the voice is being heard even louder because the individuals are seen now in a different light, because we're all the same. We're all the same sitting at our desks, having to bat our children away and the dogs and everything like that. And it's become way easier to actually look and justify for accessibility requirements than it was before. I'm getting a lot of requests from all manners of the world around these talks because digital now has become more what's the word? It's part of our lives. Exactly what you said. There's a fancy word for that.
Ubiquitous.
Yeah. Yes.
Snap.
Yes. We're seeing a digital disruption right now.
Yeah, we definitely are. Can I ask you a slightly technical question around HTML? So when you showed us the first example of, the not accessible and the accessible, one of the things you mentioned was using proper HTML markup. Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, that's a really important thing in terms of, using your nav and article and aside and whatnot. What's your opinion on ARIA, if you have one?
So,
I often find it more confusing than anything else, to be honest.
So HTML5 is ARIA. It really is. You know, they waited for HTML4 to become something else and they didn't manage. And they looked to other inspirations. And if I actually have a talk, that the whole talk is to show how HTML5 is ARIA, because most of the tags were taken as inspiration from that. So ARIA is difficult because you have to cater for WCAG AAA compliant, and you have to really build your applications for people with accessibility requirements. And it's a lot of effort. So unless you have accessibility software like a screen reader, it doesn't make financial sense though. So if you have ARIA, and it's ARIA, if it's HTML5 compliant, it is ARIA compliant, unless you're doing some silly buggery things in the background. So don't deviate off HTML5 and it is ARIA compliant. That's my advice.
Okay, thanks. Do we have any other questions?
Sure. So I have loads.
I'm sure you do.
So I think first and foremost, yeah, how do I phrase this? I think I tend to be a lot more cynical when it comes to accessibility. Maybe it's just from kind of having seeing kind of the journey of accessibility over the past couple of years, the past decade. I know Dave Rupert shared something recently, a report that said that not only did accessibility get worse, but the prediction is that it's going to get even worse. And I think some of this can be attributed to just that the web in itself just got significantly more complex. So, it's kind of a bit of a moving goalpost because, 5 years ago, we were having a discussion about, making sites that are built with HTML, unordered lists. How do we make that type of thing accessible? Now we're kind of in the realm where we're actually building software in the browser. So it's kind of as if the goalpost itself moved, but yeah, I think Justin, what you mentioned about kind of the responsive, kind of going the same route as the responsive design. I hear that quite a bit. I know Steve Barnett mentions it quite a bit. If no one's if anyone is unsure who he is, maybe check him out. He used to be based here in South Africa. He's, I think, moved to New Zealand now. Correct.
Yeah, New Zealand.
Yeah. He does a lot of work on accessibility, and he used to say that as well. But I think the main difference here is that we really only saw a move in terms of responsiveness once mobile phones started getting a massive market share. And I guess the cynical side, my cynical side would say that, just due to the fact that able users will always be in the majority, we're not necessarily going to see that shift happen by itself. So I think my question to you, Rory, is more in terms of, so I think there's a lot to be excited about in terms of accessibility. Is there anything that you're concerned about? Anything that you find troubling in terms of trends regarding accessibility and so forth?
I think people think that the barrier to entry is so high that they kind of look a blind eye. And one of the passions that I've done is I've shown that there's, if you need to bolt on, you can do the test. If you need to do DevOps, you can do it. If you need, finally, if you want to just convert it, there's the immersive reader. So there is no real, a barrier to entry in that regard, but it's the don't ask, don't tell kind of mindset that you have to conquer. And then I get people coming up to me when I do these talks and saying, I feel terrible. I've never really catered for this. I don't know where to start. And I go, just run the fast pass on your site, get a view of what you have, and just make just look at what the easiest quick wins are then to make sure that you can actually do it. Convert some of it to ARIA-based HTML5 and just start. That empathy bubble has to be popped at some point. You have to be able to be mature enough to say that you are or you aren't accessible minded. That's it. That's really it. Just do the report, show it to your stakeholders and say, this is what we are. Let's have a frank discussion around it. And that's my biggest kind of milestone that I feel that I need to get people. And this is why I want to do that talk. Start somewhere. And once we all take that, start somewhere, and then we can get to Ikigai, what you love, what the world needs, what you get paid for, and what you're good at. And we can find the kind of the synergy between all of those three and build a perfect world.
I think also like it's because I tend to like work quite a bit with students, and so I obviously make I try and make accessibility quite a prominent part of like all the like material that I teach. But like I think it's something like
so
I don't know,
if I can show you something also. So let's go to Microsoft Edge here, right? And let's go to Microsoft.com. So one of the things that we've also done here so this is the Surface Pro 7. I wish I had that. So and Office, remember I said there. Now, if I wanted this, and students also asked for this, now I can right click here and I can go to translate, but I can go read aloud, inspect, but I'm looking for the, there's the accessibility, immersive reader built into Microsoft Edge. I think it's Edge Beta though, but not this. So let's go read aloud. No, it's not
Microsoft 365.
But it's built into, I think, yeah, I've just redone it there. It's not, it's in Edge Beta. But students are our actually biggest clientele. Because Immersive Reader is an incredible product for students. It teaches people how to read, especially if you're not an English speaking person. So one is that we're taking that accessibility mindset. But what we realized is that the elderly generation needed it as much as students, because then they could leverage off that. And the persona spectrum of the student became also intermingled with the persona spectrum of the silver generation. And we didn't know that, and we couldn't create that connection until we looked at them in the same persona spectrum though. You need to do those kind of labs to be able to see how your product affects different areas. And then you can say, wait a second, now I understand how to approach my students or my clientele or my customers. And it's a fun experience. You can actually do that. You can go in and get all of those persona spectrums. They're freely available. Let's go and get them. Let's go freely there. And I can click through here. Command click. I think command click. I don't understand why they had to add another button on a Mac, like command click. Wasn't control good enough?
I don't know. You tell me, Justin.
Let's see. Okay, so here's
command sounds more forceful.
That's what I want.
Control of the machine.
Yeah. So you can go through all of these there around that. It's a pity that I didn't actually have immersive reader here. Yeah, that's so you can go immersive reader Edge. I think it's Edge Beta. So how to use immersive reader in the new Microsoft Edge, and you can go there and let me just make sure I've done the right thing here. Microsoft Edge, how to enable open Microsoft Edge, navigate to the website. I remember now. Click on the immersive reader book and speaker button. So it's actually a button. I forget. So if I go to, let's go to iol.co.za, news, never a good sign. Let's just go here. So the immersive reader button, if it is compatible will actually be, not install IOL. Let's go, there we go. There we go here. And not send this page. Okay, so it's supposed to pop up. I'm in Chrome, sorry. Chrome, let's go to IOL.co.za. And we don't want to install the PWA. Who would install the IOL PWA? Install, maybe they can deny it though, but there should be an immersive reader little button there that you can actually go in and it will bring up the immersive reader settings there. It could be also www.
Maybe all the ads broke it.
Yeah, no, just okay. And the ads know me better than I know myself, and it teases me like, do you want this? Do you want this? And I'm shopping so much recently. Okay, well, it would. I think it's Edge Beta. I think so. And that's Google Translate, which is awesome. Yeah, I didn't say that out loud. Yes.
Would you mind posting that personas link in the chat?
Let's go. Where?
Go
remember, all the slides are available with that link. Command C and Command V. It doesn't strange my brain when I click on Command. There we go.
Thanks very much.
Cool.
That's really cool. So another thing that I kind of struggle with as well, like obviously, you know, this is something I think about quite a lot. I had a student, I quote this quite often, who wanted to remove a focus outline on a button, and I told her, don't do it, and she's like, yeah, but just show me. And I'm like, no, like, don't do it. And she's like, okay, cool, but all morality aside, how do I do it? And I think that has become kind of like
one of the rules that I advise people around HTML is that don't try to make the software accessible if you're not going to make your software accessible. Leave it alone. Because you can do more damage by trying to get around it or hack it than you can do if you just leave it as pure and that. So you just tell them that it's not accessible, because then they're going to go in there and they're going to like, if you remember let's go here, bad. And this is the W3 org accessible software. Now the inaccessible version there, if I go into my accessibility insights and I go into tab stops. Now they've messed with the tab stops here. And if I go tab stops, and they've changed the tab indexing, and it goes nowhere, because they might have actually changed it or thought that they could do that. And it doesn't really go anywhere because they made a mistake. They decided to try it themselves though. So rather, don't touch it, don't mess with it. And if you do touch it, put in headers there to say this isn't accessible, cheers, bye.
Oh, that's actually an interesting approach. You know, in the same way that like a lot of sites say you require JavaScript or whatever.
Yes.
But yeah, so like I think like, so just to, as an aside to the point that Justin asked about Aria, is I read a report at one point that kind of found a correlation between sites that actually did custom Aria, a negative correlation between how good your accessibility is and how much Aria work, custom Aria you've added. So the irony being that sites that tend to do that actually seem to perform worse accessibility wise. And I think that maybe speaks to, if you don't, it's kind of that thing of a little knowledge is dangerous. So if you don't completely understand what you're doing, don't try and make your site actively more accessible. But I think one thing that I tend to highlight is accessibility is often more about the things that you shouldn't do than it is about like actively taking an average site and making it more accessible. It's more like, how do you take an average site and not make it less accessible? But I think what I find what I struggle with as well is, so I did mention, like, I work with a lot of students, and I work with students all over the spectrum, from like interface interaction design to actual coding and so forth. And like, you started out with like agile and so forth, and and the reality is a lot of teams like still follow like a very strict like waterfall approach. Is that the way I wish it was? By no means, but like it seems, specifically in South Africa, so you have kind of designers making a lot of decisions that have accessibility concerns down the road. So yeah, like, so it's kind of like this thing where like there's so many moving parts and so many people involved, and people making decisions without realizing the implications of the decisions that they're making. I think it's part of a bigger problem. I'm currently reading, I never know how to pronounce his surname, John Madia, his book, How to Speak Machine, in which he actually says we're kind of in a bit of a crisis in terms of how we design software, in terms of just the fact that kind of we're still treating design as a visual exercise. So I think it's part of a bigger problem. But so to kind of condense that into a question, so I've been wondering, like, what are kind of accessibility, like resources related to accessibility that you can give visual designers? So I tend to give my students A11Y project. To me, it's kind of one of the best resources, but it does seem to be very developer heavy in terms of like semantic HTML and so forth. Whereas the things that they might be more applicable to them is like things like color contrast and so forth.
So I would actually get them to do the, and you can see it here, I would get them to do the assessment first. And go through the assessment. They don't have to do it perfectly, but keyboard focus, landmarks, headings, repetitive content, links, native gadgets, custom gadgets, timed events, error status, page navigation, passing image, language, sensory, adaptable content, audio, video. And if you can go into each one of these here, then it gives you an overview of keyboard navigation, and it kind of says pass or fail. That's all they have to do. Did it manage to do that or not? Headings, heading level. And this is a really nice an overview. And you can, if not just all, then just one. Like, for example, passing like images. You want to learn images, so image function here. You can go through that and code it as ARIA, pass and fail. So this is a nice way to teach the basics of that, and it goes through everything. This is the most extensive list that I've found.
Yeah, but so I think like the thing for me is, I guess if you go semantics, it'll probably get more developer focused. Is I often find that for them is kind of like makes it a bit more challenging, especially if it's like people like purely design students that don't necessarily code. I think like accessibility is overwhelming enough. I think the first time you encounter it, like especially if you didn't even realize this was a thing, like, and now all of a sudden you need to think about all of that. And I think like having like kind of it be like technical in nature in terms of like semantics and H1 tags and so forth, kind of to me tends to like make it even harder. So yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem like there is one specifically for designers, which, yeah, I don't know. Justin, maybe we can create one at some point.
Maybe. But Skalk, I was just wondering, could you give an example of where you think a designer might do something that's going to cause an accessibility problem, other than like a color contrast?
So the best is actually the W3.org, going through the success criteria and going through, it's a big read, but it's a classic read, going through that, and it's kept updated, and yeah, it is a lot, but then tied into the table cement, like for the CSS content, and then just the visual helper on there. So it'll actually tell you what is and what isn't happening with the CSS content around that. So you can tie in the semantics with the HTML, with the description and the design choices around what they need to do.
Yeah. But maybe also the W3C design guidelines, which in conjunction with all of that, because I think those are still very relevant as well.
Yeah, so to kind of name, like, I think a good example, like, would be just, especially if you're using it like forms and input and so forth. So I think that's one of my pet peeves. And this isn't necessarily, I think, Rory, this maybe speaks to your point about, like, it's actually a spectrum, where you have like someone who only has one arm on the one hand, and then you have someone who's like eating a sandwich while using his like laptop or whatever on the other hand, which I very much appreciate as someone who eats lunch at their desk. I very much appreciate it if I can still use your site while eating a sandwich. But I think, like, so, like, one of my pet peeves, and that I see quite a bit, is, like, for a login form, like username and password, a lot of times people put forgot password, or they put something else in between the username and password input. And as someone who just tabs usually, so I type and I tab, and then it actually selects the button instead of the actual password field. So things like that, like, so kind of implied tabbing order in terms of where you place things and so forth. Like,
but that tabbing order also, you can get it done in DevOps. So there's one, manual testing, and two, you have to automate, because there's no way that you can, while one small change is introduced, you can't keep tabs of it. The irony. And hence why all of this engine is available with the DevOps processes, and you take that engine and you run it against your websites, either offline websites, or you can actually do your live production websites, and then you check and the output of that via that. It's what we see. It's why DevOps was created, because it lends itself to that agile mindset of test and shift left and do small investments.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's maybe part of, I think, what people find overwhelming about accessibility is that it's just there's so much out there, and there's actually a lot of conflicting information. So I recently read Form Design Patterns by Adam Silver. That was published like 2 years ago, 2018, and he's known for a lot of work that he did for GDS, gov.uk, and so forth. So he knows what he's talking about, and I think in his book he mentions that screen readers are unable to distinguish between ordered lists and unordered lists. Which I found really strange. And I asked someone, and they said, like, no, they've been able to do this since forever. So I don't really know why he said that or why he thought that, but I think there's a lot of like conflicting information. And I think it's just because generally, like bringing this back to the topic of responsive design, regardless of kind of the motivation for building something responsive, I think it's very easy to test in terms of you can just drag your browser or whatever.
So, I mentioned stick carrot, but there's another incentive though. There's chocolate. There's chocolate.
It's like a super carrot.
Chocolate. Yeah. And when that starts to hit, and it will, when it becomes competitive, so you can have competitively how accessible your software is. That's a whole different story. We haven't hit that. I agree with you. We're still kind of taking the other approach to say we'll do it if you force us or if we have to. But when it becomes competitive and people start to make money off it, the whole mindset will change.
No, definitely. I think it's just like, I think anyone who cares about the topic of accessibility is always kind of just discouraged by how slowly things move, and it just seems like if it changes at all. So yeah, I think as I mentioned initially, it's hard to not get to kind of like not lose hope. But yeah, I guess.
Well, we're hopefully the Canadians will set everybody right, because they're violent as hell when it comes to accessibility.
Yeah, and they're known to not be very polite. So
yeah.
Cool. So, but that's everything from my side. This was very informative for me.
Thank you. And yeah, follow me on at Rory Pretty. I did this recently in Python. I did it in Ruby. I've done it in C#. Have a look at those pipeline samples. Yeah, reach me in DM and tell me how it goes. Tell me how your journey goes. And thank you for this opportunity to speak. It's a lovely community, and I'll look forward to seeing you in and around the South African communities.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time. It was really, really great to see this presentation and to see those tools as well. And I also think it's really great that Microsoft is driving this, because it's not a small company.
Yeah.
So having one of the most important players in the online space and application space driving accessibility is a massive boon.
Microsoft, Google, and Apple, really big players, and they one of the biggest partners for all three of them is DQ Labs, that uses the X engine. So as long as you kind of stick to DQ Labs, you can't go wrong, because it's used extensively in all three. Right. And have a look at that.
Will do. Any last questions from anyone? Everyone's saying thank you, and that they're going to go and tab something now. Yeah. Okay. If there's nothing else, thanks again, Rory. Thanks to everyone for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you at the next one on the 11th for Jason Miller, not Donald Trump's spokesperson.
Hey, if people attend. I don't care what the reason is for them attending.
I don't know if we want any MAGA pics on the screen.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks again. Cheers, everyone.
Bye. Cheers.